Over the course of my studies in theoretical physics, I've traveled across the continent and around the world sampling new ideas and tasting different answers to the questions of how and of why. And still, I find there remains a deep hunger which lives within me, a burning desire to share these great ideas with the people around me. And so, I have assembled a team of some of the greatest, most lucid, most creative minds I've encountered in my travels. And I call them my Titanium Physicists. You're listening to the Titanium Physicist Podcast, and I'm Ben Tippett. And now, allez, physique! There is a famous song which I'm sure you've heard because it's iconic. It's the iconic song which seems synonymous with a certain iconic movie. The song, however, was not written for this movie. It was written in 1931 by Herman Humpfeld for a Broadway comedy called Everybody's Welcome. And for that reason, even though the song is very, very famous, its prelude is less so. So I'm going to read the prelude to you because it's relevant. This day and age we're living in gives cause for apprehension, with speed and new invention and things like fourth dimension. Yet we get a trifle weary with Mr. Einstein's theory, so we must get down to earth at times, relax, relieve the tension. And no matter what the progress or what may yet be proved, the simple fact of life are such that it cannot be removed. And you'll probably recognize the song from here. It goes, "You must remember this, a kiss is just a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh, the fundamental things apply as time goes by." So, this was the funnest way I could think to start us about a conversation about, as they put it, Mr. Einstein's theory. Today we're going to be talking about the speed of light, we're going to talk about special relativity, and we're going to talk about what it tells us about the mysteries of the fourth dimension. To help talk to us today about time, I'd like to introduce our guest, Michael Mookie Terracciano, author of the webcomic Dominic Deegan, Oracle for Hire, about a guy who can use magic to look through time and his adventures with his girlfriend who has tusks. His comics has been going steadily for about 10 years now. Welcome to the show, Michael.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Have you got anything you want to tell the audience about? Maybe they could purchase from you?
Everything you need to know about me and my webcomic is available on my website, dominic-deegan.com. And there's a store there. I sell collections of the stories in book form. I'm still catching up to what I have online as to what I have in print. There's close to 3,000 comics on the site, and I've got 7 stories collected in book form. I'm still about 5 years behind in print form what I have in book form. Yeah, if you want to come on by, check out the comic, go to dominic-deegan.com. I hope you like what you see.
Awesome. So, in light of your knowledge of magic and things to do with seeing through time, I'm going to summon for you today 2 of my favorite titanium physicists. Arise, Dr. Jocelyn Reed!
Roar!
Nice. Dr. Jocelyn did her undergraduate at UBC, her PhD at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She's now a professor at the Cal State University Fullerton, and she's still working on neutron stars. Now arise, Dr. Ken Clark!
Whoosh!
It's a bird. It's a plane. No, wait. It's Dr. Ken. Dr. Ken did his undergraduate at the University of Toronto and then his master's and PhD at Queen's University. And he's now at Penn State working on Ice Cube. How about if we start by talking about time?
Time. All right.
Isaac Newton was the first person to hammer down numerical laws describing motion. And if you're going to describe motion, you have to describe things changing with respect to something else. So if two balls are rolling down the hill, one ball might be rolling faster than the other ball. How do you quantify the difference in the way they're moving? So if you're going to talk about speeds, in essence, a speed tells you how fast something's moving with respect to time.
I mean, people were doing stuff similar to this before Newton.
Yeah.
Galileo was trying to quantify the speed of light with lanterns on different hills.
Right. It's part of the paradigm of the time, was that you could just kind of say, okay, we're not going to ask the question, what is time? We're just going to assume that all clocks that work really well give an accurate representation of time.
There's some platonic ideal clock in the sky that just measures, bong, bong, the time that applies to the entire universe.
Right, the God clock. Which I kind of like that idea. Just big clock.
Just, fair warning, don't get your whole worldview too caught up in this, because we're going to show later.
You're breaking my God clock philosophy? I didn't know you guys were inviting me on your show.
Don't get into your fundamental beliefs quite
Damn
yet.
it. I am a God clock fundamentalist, and
I've been
thought...
for seconds now.
Einstein came around and smashed the God clock.
Ugh.
Well, one of the key things that special relativity gives you is that there is no universal time, that time is dependent entirely on who is measuring it.
I think that's the coolest concept about relativity. I think it's fantastic.
So today we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail.
Sweet.
And first, I think it's probably appropriate to talk about the speed of light.
It's kind of the whole basis of Einstein's theory, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. People knew that light traveled at a finite speed since the 1600s. Nobody knew exactly what they were. There were some theories of light that imagined that there were little particles of light being emitted by whatever was shiny, and other theories that described it as a wave.
Have they ever decided on whether light is a wave or a particle?
They've firmly decided that it's both.
Yeah. Firmly decided not to decide.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that gets into quantum theory, which is the other crazy modern physics thing that
Oh,
we're
God.
talking about.
Is that being discussed tonight, too?
No.
Oh, okay, good.
We're going to stick to one sort of counterintuitive understanding of the universe at a time.
Yeah.
All right, good.
So, like I said, some people thought light was a wave. So the question is, what's it waving in? Nobody knew. And then this guy, Maxwell.
James Clerk
Maxwell. He lived in the 1800s, and he was Scottish. And what he did was...
He came up with a theory that he considered to be great guns.
So, before Maxwell, there were a lot of people who were doing work on electric forces, like Benjamin Franklin, electric charges, right? And then other people were working on magnetism. And the deal is that magnets affect electric charges as well as other magnets, and you can make a magnetic field using moving charges. And so Maxwell combined all of these equations and said, oh, I'm going to add another little bit of an equation to this part. And then he ended up with 4 equations bundled together called the Maxwell's equations, named after him.
Oh.
Maxwell had these equations, and some of them said that if you have a changing electric field, you get a magnetic field, and others of them said that if you have a changing magnetic field, you get a changing electric field. So if you take an electric charge and move it around a lot, this will cause waves that expand outwards. And he said, hey, that's light. And so he proved that these waving electromagnetic waves were in fact what everybody recognizes as light, and that was history. But here's the thing. Nobody at the time knew what was waving. I mean, if you have a slinky and you make a wave go down the slinky, the wave is traveling through the slinky, right? It needs a medium.
Right.
As we're speaking here, waves are traveling through the air. So the air is the medium.
Right.
So the question was, what is the medium of these electromagnetic waves? And at the time, everybody thought that these waves would travel through something called luminiferous ether. The idea is that, we on the planet Earth are traveling like some flotsam floating in a river.
Through the luminiferous ether.
And this river is the luminiferous ether. It's flowing around us, and electromagnetic waves are propagating through it. So, some people wanted to test it.
The Earth is whipping around the sun, and the sun is perhaps moving relative to distant stars. So, what's the absolute motion of the sun? That's what people were trying to measure. The ether is some reference frame for the universe, and the sun is moving through it. And by the way that light propagates, you can tell how we're moving through the stuff that it's propagating through.
It's kind of like how a boat measures its speed in the ocean, right? So they used to drag these things behind them to tell how fast they were moving relative to the water around them.
Right.
So in essence, that's all we're saying. We're saying that the sun was traveling through this ether. We want to be able to use a little bit of physics to figure out how fast we are moving relative to this fluid.
Gotcha.
Sort of the key thing is if you sort of send something out and it's with the current, it's going to get a little boost. And if it's against the current, it's going to get a little delay.
All right. I'm with you so far.
What they were going to do is they were going to send pulses of light, so waves through the ether in different directions to see how we're moving through it. So I want you to hold your arms out at 90 degrees. So hold one arm straight in front of your body and then your left arm out to the side. So they built an apparatus that took a beam of light and then it splits this beam of light and sends half of it to your right arm and half of it to your left arm. And at the end of your hands, there are two mirrors. So then the light hits those mirrors and bounces back and hits your head. Can you imagine it now?
I think so.
So this was the setup. It's called an interferometer. And the idea here is that you take this thing and you put it in a fluid so that waves moving down the arm and back, because they're at 90 degrees to one another, the fluid probably won't be moving in the same direction for both arms. So maybe one arm will be across the direction the fluid is moving, and the other arm will be straight into the fluid flow.
Okay.
So the idea here is that the two arms are going to feel the motion of the fluid in different ways.
Gotcha.
It's called an interferometer, specifically.
Interferometer.
A Michelson interferometer. So here's how it works. I want you to imagine like a snake.
I like snakes. All right, I'm with you on this.
Okay, so imagine a snake and that it has stripes. It goes red, yellow, every, 1 inch. Really reliable.
Gotcha. Nice, reliable snake. Gotcha.
So we're going to take two snakes, identical snakes, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take them together at the middle point where the light beam gets split in two, and we're going to stretch them, one along the right arm and then one along the left arm.
Okay.
You bring them out, you bounce them off the mirrors, and then you stretch them back.
All right.
So what we're going to compare is how the little red, yellow stripes on the snakes line up when they return to the center.
Now that they're all bent and bounced off of mirrors and stuff?
That's right, yeah.
All right.
So the deal is that if one of the two arms is slightly longer than the other, then their stripes will be slightly out of alignment.
All right, I think so.
So the deal is that light has a wavelength.
Okay.
When you split these light beams in two and bounce them down off the arms, the distance it has to travel is slightly longer or shorter than the other. Then when they recombine at the center, one will kind of be advanced or recessed behind the others. They won't match up exactly anymore.
My brain's catching up, but yeah, I think I'm still with you.
Okay. So the deal with light is that it kind of interferes. Actually, you like music, right?
I love music. I absolutely love music.
You ever set up like stereo speakers?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
I used to play music quite often.
Right on. So you set up two stereo speakers. They're essentially emitting the same sound at the same time, right?
Yeah.
As you walk around the room, the amplitude of the sound changes because these waves are in essence interfering with each other. The waves can overlap, they can pass through each other.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right? And that makes it louder or softer. But in the end, in the room, there'll be kind of a pattern.
Right.
Right? So there'll be some dead spots and some really loud spots. So in essence, the same thing happens to light when you make light interfere with itself. If you shine two dots of light at the same place on the wall, you'll see these weird fringes emerge from it, which is essentially...
Oh, okay.
So, back to this interferometer.
Yes, all right.
You take one beam of light and you split it in two. So at the very start, it's in phase with itself, and then you split it in two. Part of it goes down your left arm, part of it goes down your right arm. Because you're in this ether, so the amount of time it takes for this wave to travel through the ether, bounce off the mirror, and come back depends on how the ether's flowing around it.
Gotcha.
So if the flow of the water is going along an arm, it gets a little extra time gained from going down along with the flow, but then it loses more time when it's trying to go against the flow on the way back.
like when you're in an airplane and like you're with the air current, you arrive a little faster. Or if you're flying into the air current, you're going to arrive a little later. Is that the same general principles that work with light
exactly
as well?
right. The plane is light and the air is ether.
This is past tense. This is what they thought.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So the amount of time that you would gain or lose in terms of distances on Earth is really small because light travels really, really fast. But this interferometer takes advantage of the fact that even though the amount of time difference the light beam will feel as it travels down these two arms is really, really small, as the light bounces off the mirrors, gets recombined, and it will form an interference pattern on a sheet off to the side.
Gotcha.
So the moral of the story is you have this interference pattern that you can look
Right.
at. Whenever you set up the machine, you get this interference pattern. And the idea is that if we move the orientation of these two arms with respect to the ether, so we change it so that we reorient it, this interference pattern is going to change because the amount of time difference between the photon traveling down the left arm and it traveling down the right arm will change depending on how we orient it with respect to the ether.
Now, this interferometer was meant to try to prove the whole like luminiferous ether
Yeah, that's right.
thing.
Right.
Gotcha.
So the idea here is we move this interferometer, we rotate it a little bit and check to see how this pattern changes. And even though it's a really subtle effect, because the wavelength of light is so small, you should be able to see this pattern changing as you reorient your arms.
Actually, they left the machine in place and let the Earth's motion around the sun change it around.
Oh, really?
They even put it up on top of a mountain. They did all sorts of things.
They didn't want any like local eddies of ether to affect it, I suppose.
So the moral of the story is, no matter how they oriented it, no matter what time of year it is, no matter how the Earth was speeding around the sun, no matter where the sun was, no matter whether it was day or night, this pattern didn't change.
So there was no interference to be had.
It was constant.
I'm sorry. There was no special luminiferous ether river-like interference that could be changed. It was all just the same interference.
This is one of the first indications that no matter how you are moving, you measure the same velocities of light.
Because the speed of light is constant.
Got it.
Yes.
Right. So Michelson and Morley did this experiment.
And they discovered that there's no luminiferous ether affecting light.
No luminiferous ether. And nobody knew what to make of that until Albert Einstein came along. And Albert Einstein supposed, he said, what if this is all working because there's no ether and the speed of light is constant? So there was an idea. Einstein didn't invent relativity. It was invented by a guy named Galileo.
Who's that? I've never heard of I'm kidding.
Yeah. So Galileo invented this thing called Galilean relativity, as we refer to it now. And the idea was that if you were in a room and you closed all the windows and you couldn't feel any vibrations, you couldn't tell whether or not your room was moving or not. There wouldn't be any experiment you could do that could say, I'm traveling down a train track at 3 kilometers an hour. You would just, if you're moving at a constant velocity, you can't tell, if you have no outside information, how fast you're moving. And therefore, all motion is relative. So Einstein took this a little bit further and said, what if everything is relative again, but in addition to that, everybody, regardless of how they're traveling, sees light traveling at exactly the same speed?
I can't even imagine the thought process to even conceive that.
Well, it's just generalizing the same idea. Like the same way I can't make any other measurements telling me I'm moving. I can't, bounce some light off 2 mirrors on opposite sides and measure some interference pattern compared to a different orientation. I can't do the Michelson-Morley experiment in my smoothly moving closed box and figure out where I'm moving relative to some absolute rest frame. We just tried to do that.
Actually, it's kind of a crazy thing because the way we're intuitively used to the world, in Galilean relativity, if something's moving and 2 people see it moving, they can disagree on how fast it's moving. So imagine that you're driving in the car, and you look out the window, and there's a seagull sitting in the air just outside your, flying, but kind of outside your window, abreast with your car. You look out and you see that seagull, and you say, hey, that seagull's sitting still. Whereas somebody standing on the side of the road will see your car go past, and then a seagull flying 60 miles an hour next to your window. And he'll say, that seagull is flying 60 miles an hour.
Right.
It's crazy windy today.
That's crazy.
The crazy thing about what Einstein said is he said, well, what if this doesn't happen for light? what if regardless of whether you're in a car, whether you're in a rocket ship, whether you're sitting still, you're always going to see light traveling at the same speed? It's a little bit crazy, but as Jocelyn said, it's entirely equivalent to what Michelson Morley's findings were.
I get it. It's fantastic, but I guess I just don't I don't contemplate light on a regular basis like these guys. It was their job to do, I imagine.
Well, actually, it wasn't Einstein's job to do.
Oh, that's right. He was a patent clerk. Right. Well, then I'm just a moron then.
Well, if we're all going to be comparing ourselves to Einstein, then...
Yeah. So the deal is that Einstein said, well, okay, so what if everybody will measure how fast light is moving, and they'll all agree on the same number, regardless of how fast they're moving, relative to one another, which is crazy in terms of birds flying outside windows. But what's even crazier is that he came up with a series of thought experiments that let him build all of this thing we now call special relativity. So the nice thing about special relativity is that you can understand it by looking through these thought experiments one by one.
Are you going to read me the thought experiments?
Jocelyn, you're up.
Oh, all right, we're doing these.
Okay.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
all right.
yes. So the thing is, you just take this idea and you start playing with it and you start understanding some of these bizarre consequences of special relativity. So one of the things you can do is, okay, we can imagine we have one of these photons of light and we have two mirrors that are so great that we can just bounce the photon back and forth between the mirrors.
I like to imagine that we have a grandfather clock. So it's a clock, it's got a face, then it's got a tall body, a tower, right? And then I replace the pendulum mechanism with a decent clock mechanism, so the clock works on its own. And then I've taken out the pendulum, so I have this long tube under the clock face, and I put a mirror at the very top and a mirror at the very bottom, and then I've got this tennis ball of photons. And then I bounce it off the bottom, and the tennis ball of photons go down, up, down, up, down,
I see.
up, over.
All right. So
That's
the light snake is going up. Is our swinging pendulum, so to speak.
We have a light snake pendulum clock.
It's our metronome, so to speak.
Yes.
Cool. All right, I'm with you. Right.
So we want the bouncing to be, say, up and down. Gotcha. Our little ball of light is going up and down in the clock. Gotcha. And now the crazy thing we're going to do is we're going to put the clock on one of these uniformly moving trains. So first off, you're sitting on the train with a clock and you look at the thing moving up and down and you say, okay, I know the distance, I know the speed of light, that gives me the time. Yep. Now, think about someone who's sitting outside the train and you've got a really great window and the person can watch your light clock from outside as it's moving along. And now just in your mind's eye, kind of trace out the path of the light ball moving up and down that person sees. And it's making kind of an angular sawtooth pattern, right?
Okay.
Now, the thing is, though, on the train, you know the speed of light and you know the distance. Mm-hmm. And so that's giving you the time interval. Now, this person outside measures a longer distance because it's that diagonal length between the blips at the top and the bottom. But the speed of the light has to be the same. So that means they're measuring time differently from you. So, you've counted out so many light pulses take 1 second.
Okay.
But the person sitting by the roadside says, well, that many light pulses, the light went a way longer distance.
Right.
So it takes more than 1 second.
For it to go up and to reach the top and the bottom of the clock.
Yeah. This is this idea of time dilation. So that if things are moving, an external person watching them will say that time is moving differently for that moving thing.
That's a cool thought experiment. It's very accessible. It's a very, very accessible way to explain time dilation.
Yeah.
I like it.
Was a genius.
Yeah, seriously.
we should talk about the muons now.
So muons are these particles that we know they take a certain time to decay. Okay, they take, I think, 2.2 microseconds, something like that. They decay really fast. If you had one in front of you, after 2.2 microseconds, it's probably gone. It's decayed into something else.
And is that their only property, that they just decay?
It's the one important property that we're worried about for this discussion.
Okay, all right.
But another good thing about them is that we have a really good source of them. So there's all sorts of cosmic rays and stuff that hit the Earth, and they produce muons in our atmosphere. So we're constantly bombarded with these things.
And these things are just kind of around all the time?
They're just around all the time. They're just decaying. It's what they do, basically.
All right, cool.
This is their role in life.
Seems like they got the shit end of the stick, but all right, that's what they got to do. Cool.
It does, but they're really important for this very reason that they do this cool thing. Yeah, exactly. Right. This is their role. Is that we know that if one's sitting in front of us, it takes 2.2 microseconds to decay. But when they're created going really fast, like very close to the speed of light when they come down.
Okay.
And what we can do is we can actually measure them as they get close to the Earth, and we can see that they last for a lot longer than 2.2 microseconds. And the reason for that is exactly what Jocelyn was saying, is that their internal clocks that tell them when they should decay, they're being stretched out. So the time is going slower for them.
Really?
And you can do these really cool experiments where you like count the number up on the top of a mountain and then count the number at the ground, and you can actually determine how fast they're going relative to the speed of light by looking at how many last for that long. Yeah, it's really cool.
All right. So rule number 1 with special relativity is that the faster you see somebody going, the slower their clock will be moving relative to yours.
The slower you see their clock moving. And they don't notice anything. The muon's just like, oh, I'm a muon. I'm dead. I mean, it doesn't. The muon doesn't know that it's just like, oh my gosh, there's this huge Earth coming up towards me, but I'm going to decay before I hit it anyway, so I don't really care. And of course, the muon sees all these humans moving in slow motion around it.
It's true.
Because those humans are going past them super fast.
Wait, they're going slow because we appear to be going slow because they're going so fast?
Well, they see us going fast.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm back. I'm back on board.
Okay, so there are a few rules to relativity. I should have mentioned this earlier. These effects only really kick in when you get really close to the speed of light. The first one is that all these things are relative. So everybody in their own room is going to think that they're right. Second thing is that the speed of light is constant. Third thing is the rule called time dilation. So if you look out your window and you see a rocket ship moving past you, and suppose you can see the clock inside that rocket ship, you'll see the hands on that clock ticking by extra slowly. But conversely, a person in the rocket ship, if they're moving at a constant velocity, will think that their system, their reference frame, it's called, is correct. Mm-hmm. They'll look out their window, see the world rush past them at a constant velocity, and so if they look out and see a clock rush past them, say they go past Big Ben, they will see the time on the clock ticking by extra slowly.
Gotcha. Yes.
So, there are more rules in special relativity. So there's time dilation, there's one called length contraction.
Length contraction?
That's right. And so, in length contraction, the idea here is that let's say I have a rocket ship, and it's 100 meters long.
Gotcha.
If it gets really close to the speed of light, and then it uses its engine to go really fast, it's going almost the speed of light. Let's suppose I have a camera. Mm-hmm. The rocket ship flies past me, and I take a photograph of the rocket as it's passing me. And then I want to figure out how long the rocket is, so I look at the photograph with a ruler. The rocket ship will seem to shrink. So the faster it goes, the closer to the speed of light it goes, the more that 100-meter rocket ship will get squished down. And the reason for this is actually kind of the converse of this time dilation. I've got a quick explanation for it. So you've got this rocket ship. Suppose that this rocket ship, it's going out to Alpha Centauri. It's going really far away. Time dilation will be occurring on the rocket ship. So what feels like it will take, a year and a half for this rocket ship to go this distance, the people on board the rocket ship, it will feel like 2 months have passed, much less than a year because their time is being dilated. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. For me, it looks like this rocket ship has traveled a light year and a third in the amount of time that it's been traveling. The people on the rocket, though, only feel like a couple months have passed.
Okay? Right.
So somehow they know how fast they're moving. They can see everything moving past their ship. Somehow the distance that they have traveled in their reference frame to them, the distance they have traveled for that period of time must be shorter.
It feels shorter for them, the travelers, than it looks to us, the observers.
That's right.
And they would actually measure it to be shorter.
That's right. So it's actually the converse. So I was telling you about how this rocket ship, as it goes really fast, it shrinks.
Okay.
Similarly, they're in the rocket ship, they look out the window, and they've seen the whole universe get accordioned in. So that all of this distance in the direction they're traveling has been squished in by a certain amount. Okay?
Huh.
So what would, before they got in their rocket ship, look like a light year and a half, once they get up to full speed, that distance between us and the next star only looks like it's a couple light months.
Couple of light months. Jeez.
So in essence, the deal is time is moving slower for them, but in the direction that they're traveling, they look out the window, they see everything moving past them at this really high, close to the speed of light speed. And so they look out the window and see a rock. That rock will be squished down, right? So instead of being round, it will be shaped like a mint. Scotch mint.
Pancake.
Scotch mint pancake. Sure.
They'll look out and they'll see, a long train that they pass by. And the train, instead of being a kilometer long, will only seem like half a kilometer long.
That's crazy.
And so this distance that they're traveling between us and the next star will also seem like it's shrunk down by a certain amount.
Oh, Ben, do you know what time it is?
Adventure time!
Rocket barn time!
Oh, rocket barn time! Okay.
What?
Right.
What's happening?
Okay.
Oh, it's time to get excited.
It's time to get excited.
What's happening? Am I going to be questioned on what I've learned so far?
No. We're just, you know how your mind is going, oh my god, that's so weird. Oh my god, that's so weird. We're just going to double the weirdness factor with this next one.
Son of a bitch.
Right. Okay.
Actually, what I think is the best part is that you guys are really excited about this, and that I think it's your enthusiasm is rubbing off on me a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
That we're gonna blow his freaking mind.
It's pretty cool stuff.
No, I love it. I think it's your enthusiasm for the subject is infectious. So hit me.
All right.
Blow my mind. What do you got?
Simultaneity goes out the window.
Oh God.
So simultaneity is the idea that
We're used to thinking that we can say, if I have two events that happen far apart, like a flash of lightning and a crash of a meteor, that we can say, oh, those happened at the same time.
Right.
That's this idea we have, is there's this universal time advancing through the universe in the same way.
there's a classic example of this. Imagine that you're standing on a platform of a railway, and then there's a guy in a Japanese bullet train going past at that moment. And at the moment the Japanese bullet train passes you, on either end of the bullet train, they get hit by lightning. Ka-chow! Okay?
Okay.
So, they get hit by lightning, and a quarter second later or whatever, you see a flash on the left and a flash on the right arriving to you at the same time.
Okay.
Okay? So you would describe that as saying, okay, those two flashes of light happened at the same time. Lightning hit at the same time.
Gotcha.
The guy in the bullet train, in the time it took for the light to go from those ends of the train to hit you, the guy in the bullet train has moved forward just a little bit down the track. He's going to see the light from the front end lightning flash before he sees the light from the back end lightning flash hit him.
Right.
Okay? So the guy in the bullet train is going to say, no, those lightning strikes didn't happen at the same time. First, the front of the train got hit by lightning, then the back of the train got hit by lightning.
Okay.
Okay, so simultaneity, this idea that people can agree on the order that things happen in, is kind of out the window. Unless one thing causes another thing, it turns out that it's kind of up to debate.
It just depends on which uniformly moving observer chooses to measure things.
Right. So there is an extreme version of this.
Oh boy, is this where my mind's gonna get blown?
Yeah.
You guys are really excited.
It's called the Rocket Barn.
You guys are going to break me, aren't you? Oh, boy. If there's nothing but silence on my end after you guys are done, it's probably because my brain has literally blown up and I'm on the floor somewhere. But I'm ready for this. Rocket barn. All right.
Okay, suppose you have this barn.
All right.
And you built it so that it has a front door and a back door. And it has a remote control, so you can press a button and the front door and the back door will both close at the same time. And then they'll open back up. An infinitesimal amount of time. They'll just clap. Closed, open.
Sounds good.
Let's say the barn is 50 meters long. It's not that long. And then we take a rocket, and the rocket is twice the length of the barn. 100 meters long.
Okay.
And let's say I want to fly the rocket straight down the middle of the barn. So I'm in the rocket ship, and I am going to speed up the rocket ship, and you're outside it looking at the rocket. To you, I'm going so fast, so close to the speed of light, that my rocket looks like it's only 25 meters long, that it's a tiny little Mario rocket.
Gotcha.
Pancake rocket.
Pancake rocket.
It's a pancake rocket. And now I'm going to fly that pancake rocket right down through the middle of the barn. And When I'm in the middle of the barn, Buddy's going to press the remote control, and then the front door and the back door are going to close for a second. So, I have managed to close the front door and the back door of the barn, and I managed to enclose this 100-meter rocket inside this little barn.
Because it's moving so quickly, it's gotten smaller.
So for the people outside, the farm workers, they see this rocket, you know, when it's at rest, when it was standing on the launch pad, it was 100 meters long. But once I get it going full speed, to them it looks like this rocket's only 25 meters long.
A quarter of the size.
Quarter of the size. God. It fits right inside the barn. They open and close the doors, so there's a second there where the barn is enclosing the rocket. Then they open the door, the rocket flies out the other side, everybody claps. So here's the thing. I mean, that's interesting as it is.
That's cool by itself.
Here's the crazy thing.
And I confess, I'm still not 100% clear on why something gets smaller the faster the speed it's going.
It looks smaller, I guess, is the key thing. Because
but you also just said that this 100-meter rocket actually does fit in to a 50-meter barn at that speed.
Now we're going to blow your mind by considering what the person on the rocket sees and thinks about all this.
Oh, no.
Because the person at the rocket sees this barn coming towards them at super fast speed, and the barn is also squished.
Right. So you're inside the rocket. You're me. Okay. I'm the guy at the controls of the rocket. I have walked the length of my rocket. Once it's going full speed, I know firsthand, I've measured it with my meter stick, I know that my rocket is 100 meters long on the inside.
Gotcha. All right.
And I'm going so fast that this 50-meter barn looks like it's only 25 meters wide now that I've got full speed, everything's squished on the outside of my ship. So, how am I going to enclose my rocket ship, which is 100 meters long, inside this super extra narrow barn? Because we know somebody even took a photograph of the barn enclosing the rocket ship.
Right.
And the answer is, what I will see on the inside of the rocket ship is I will fly my rocket into the barn, and right before the nose of my rocket hits the back end of the barn, the door of the barn will close and then open and let the front of my rocket out. And then as the back of my rocket flies through the back end of the barn, just as it passes through, the back end closes and opens. So, to me, the barn was never enclosing the rocket at all. It was just first I saw the front doors close, and then, after the back of the rocket was through, I saw the back doors close.
Hang on. My brain's catching up to that.
Take your time.
I get it. My heart is telling me, no, you get it. You got this. My brain is still working the paperwork. But I see what you mean.
I've yelled at professors over this example, so, I mean...
What about? Like, that...
I was like, this can't be true, you're lying, the math is lying, something's gotta give.
But there's all sorts of crazy, like, homework problems and stuff that physicists work through, where you have things moving at some significant bit of the speed of light, and stuff's bouncing around inside it or moving through it, and you have...
This is the part of physics and reality that is so mind-warpingly crazy that I believe it.
Okay, here, I'm gonna resolve this issue with the whole rocket barn for you now. Okay, so you got the example I gave you before, where lightning struck the front of the bullet train and the end of the bullet train, right?
Right.
That's essentially what's happening, is that we have two different observers. If you're on the outside, you'll see the front of the barn and the back of the barn door closing simultaneously. But simultaneity goes right out the window in relativity. It's no longer trustworthy because time and space get all smushed up.
All smushed up and stretched out and accordion
together.
Just like the way, in my example, the guy on the inside of the bullet train saw the front of the train get hit by lightning first, and then he saw the back of the train get hit by lightning. The guy in the rocket ship sees the front door of the barn closing first, and then he sees the back door of the barn closing.
Okay, so I have a question for you guys, and forgive me if I'm jumping ahead or if I'm cutting you guys off or anything. What is the difference between special relativity and general relativity, or is there a difference?
There is a difference. In one sense, they're both called relativity, sort of accidentally. General relativity to special relativity is sort of the same as electromagnetism to special relativity. And so general relativity is a theory of gravity. So it's
okay.
So one of the things about special relativity is that it sort of leads to why physicists talk about space-time. Because each observer is kind of measuring their own time. Okay. So there's not one time. There's this sort of volume of space-time that each observer picks out, this is my time and this is the space. And then another observer moves through this 4-dimensional thing and they say, no, this is time and this is space. And they don't quite agree. So we just talk about space-time.
Gotcha. Oh, is this the example with like it looks like a big grid? And
yeah, and you put
like a planet into it and it bends it.
Yeah,
that's general
relativity.
General relativity deals more with gravity. Special relativity deals more with light and time.
That's right.
And rockets and barns.
And rockets and barns and light snakes and great guns. Fantastic. All right.
That was great. So, thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jocelyn. You've pleased me. Your efforts have borne fruit, and that fruit is sweet. Here is some fruit. So, Ken, you get this strawberry.
Delicious.
Hey, strawberries are good, man.
Jocelyn,
they sure are.
Jocelyn, you get a raspberry. Thematically appropriate.
There's only one man who would dare give me the raspberry.
All right. I'd like to thank my guest, Michael Mookie Terracciano. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, man. It was a real pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
I'm glad you had fun. All right, everybody. Suppose you want to interact with the titanium physicists a little bit more. There's a variety of ways you can do this. So why don't you head on down to www.titaniumphysics.com, and once you're there, you can follow a link to our online store and buy a cute tie-fi t-shirt designed by Chelsea Anderson. Or you can follow a link to our brand new forums where you can hang out with us and you can be our online friend. All the Braculate Media people are there, in fact. Or, if you'd like to send us an email, go to the website and click the contact link to find our addresses. Send me your ideas, send me your questions, or even volunteer to be on our show as a titanium physicist. Now, suppose you want to listen to our show a little bit more conveniently. If you've got an iPod or an iPad, try subscribing to our show on the iTunes Store. While you're there, write us a review. We read every review you write about us, and it helps new people discover us. If you have a Zune or a BlackBerry, you can subscribe to our show using those doodads as well, or you can use Stitcher Radio app, which lets you subscribe and listen to all your favorite podcasts. You can download the Stitcher app for free on your iPhone, Android phone, Kindle Fire, or other devices. Stitcher's convenient because it lets you subscribe to your favorite podcasts and then listen to them for free. The Titanium Physicist Podcast is a member of Braculate Media. If you've enjoyed our show, you might also enjoy Science Sort of or the weekly Wienersmith. Please check them out. The intro music is by Ted Leo and the Pharmacists, and the end music is by John Vanderslice. Good day, my friends, and remember to keep science in your hearts.
Angela, something I gotta tell you, dear, before you come back here. I lost your bunny. I let him out of the cage. He was eating spring mix on the carpet. Jumped through a window out into the haze. Hop down Magnolia Boulevard.
Great guns?
Yeah, there's a letter he wrote. This is not exact wording. It was like, I have come up with a theory which I consider to be great guns.
As in, like, light is shot from a pistol?
No, it's like, that's awesome.
Totally awesome.
Oh, great guns is like his exclamation. Like, great guns, I've found a theory. I've developed a theory.
Here's the quote. I have also a paper afloat with an electromagnetic theory of light, which, till I am convinced to the contrary, I hold to be great guns.
That's pretty great.
So it's an adjective instead of just an exclamation.
Oh, it's an adjective.
Well, it's like a slang of the time, like.
God.
I can't actually think of any cool slang.
I'm getting it, and now I'm going to use it. My wife is sitting in the room. She's already looking at me cross-eyed. Like, she's like, don't start saying great guns to me, ever.
Like, this meal that you've cooked is great guns.
Oh, oh, I'm totally using this in my life now. Thank you for that.
So, Oh, by the way, the shows are always riddled with terrible false starts. So
no, that's fine. That's fine.
Don't worry that it takes us a little while to get rolling.
Don't worry about it. I'm not gonna like throw my headset down. And you like I was expecting something so much more professional. My time is valuable. Yeah, no, don't worry about it. I'm fine.
It would be kind of cool if you did.
Yeah,
I can't. Well, I'm in a pretty mellow mood.
You'd have to come back though afterwards, or wait.
I would have to come back.
That's right.
I would.
Or do it at the very end.
I could fake a storm off, but I really just had a really good sandwich for dinner, and I'm really in a good mood right now. You feed me, I'm a happy man. So I'm like, yeah, it's cool, whatever. I have a full tummy. This is great. Oh, the ether. Right. Oh, I love
ether.
Sorry, the luminiferous ether. I'm sorry that phrase didn't become science.
Yeah, it's a nice phrase.
It's really poetic just by itself.
Beautiful.
Like the luminiferous ether, like of our love. Like,
that's right. Describes love.
Actually, I think it's almost too poetic to be hard science. But maybe I just don't know enough poetic science, which is why I'm here.
You can make two photons overlap. You can shine them at the same place at the same time. And the light you see so suppose you have two and you shine them at the same.
Okay, all right, back up 1 second. I have to confess this is one of those dumb questions I was afraid to ask.
Yeah.
What exactly is a photon?
Okay. A photon is a particle of light.
Oh. Or a wave of light, they haven't decided yet.
Yeah, I want you to imagine that it's like a little snake of light.
Perfect. All right, back to snakes. I like it.
Kevin Jocelyn died a little.
I like the light snake. I can rock along with the light snake. Sure.
Yeah, I like it too.
Yeah. So the photon is essentially what is the particles that make up light.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The snake is made up of little bits, so it looks like a wave when you see a lot of them moving together, and it has all these wave properties.
Mm-hmm.
But there's sort of discrete bits of it at the lowest levels.
It's all chopped up like a worm.
Right. So when you're saying that you can overlay, what you just say, like you can fire photons at each other.
Yeah.
What you were just saying when I stopped you. Because I remember reading relatively recently there was some concern over at CERN that like, oh shit, we found them going a little faster than light. What the hell's going on?
Those infamous neutrinos.
Those little neutrino bastards.
Yeah.
Tricking us.
What caused that?
Feel like I should stand up for neutrino people here, given that that's what I work on. But
come on.
But yeah, you're right.
Wait, what?
Yeah, there was a machine that wasn't plugged in right.
There was a loose cable.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I can appreciate a story like that. That's a story with a good punchline. It's like, that's a story that someone who doesn't know much about physics like me could, I could tell that story and say, they just had it unplugged.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Actually, it was more subtle than that. I mean, they checked everything. It was slightly misaligned as it was plugged in, causing a little extra delay in the electronics.
Man, that's such fragile, precise science. It's almost like magic to me. I mean, maybe that's why I write a comic about magic spells, because like everything so super scientific like this is just me kind of looking in wonder like a peasant at you wizards, going like, you guys can do that on purpose? Oh, whoa, that's crazy. Make a magic missile next.
The sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Indistinguishable from magic, yeah. That's Arthur C. Clarke.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was more just coming from this like really fundamental thing that no matter what if you're moving at a uniform speed, you can't tell any of your measurements apart from someone who's at rest. So there's no real at rest that's any different from moving at a constant speed. You can't tell the difference. Okay, so that's.
I'm just I just want to take a minute for myself to just appreciate the light snake of grandfather clock metronome that we've constructed for this thought experiment. I just appreciate that's what I'm doing tonight.
Yeah,
it's imagining such a cool thing. But please go on. I'm sorry. Gotcha.
Okay. So you'll only see it will only be noticeable that a clock will be ticking by slowly if it's moving really, really fast relative to you.
Gotcha.
Or if your clock's really accurate. But
or like speed of light fast.
That's
close to it.
Yeah. So it's a matter of
the GPS satellites need to correct for this sort of thing as they move around in their orbits.
Oh,
that's right.
Cool.
Even though they're not moving super duper fast, nowhere near the speed of light, because they're so accurate, and we use that accuracy to find out where we are on the maps. If we don't correct for those, the fact that they're moving relative to us, all of their clocks will be off.
Yeah, we'd be off. We'd be off in our calculations of where we are by GPS if we weren't keeping track of the orbital motions.
Jeez, I don't know where I'd be without my GPS nowadays. I'm glad someone smart thought of that. Like, hey guys, by the way, the Earth is moving. You idiots, account for that. Like, oh yes sir, yes sir.
Well, that's right.
How do you count them at 2.2 microseconds?
So all you have to do is you just have to count if you just have to count the number that hit the top and the number that hit the bottom one. And you can actually, from that, you can tell. So the easy way to think of it is that if it hits both, then you know it traveled at least that distance. Right?
Okay.
So if you get one at the top and you catch it again at the bottom, you know that it went that far. And and therefore you can count the number that hit the top and count the number that hit the bottom, and you can determine how many decayed in the middle.
Oh.
So yeah,
okay.
So we can do that, and we can actually figure out how fast they're going by looking at how dilated their time is.
I see. So if you get one that hit the top but it doesn't hit the bottom, it wasn't traveling as fast. Clearly, it wasn't traveling as fast as the ones that hit the bottom, and the ones.
That's a really good way to think of it. Exactly. So we know that some of them decayed, so they had to be going. They were probably going slower, basically, because they decayed in that time, going slower than that made it that far.
And their internal clocks were not stretched as far because they weren't going as fast. So the tick-tocks of their light snake were pretty accurate.
No, that's
accurate.
right.
Were faster as opposed to the ones that were going fast, like really, really fast. So the travel time was not stretched out.
You got
it. Cool.
They're little snakes. The ones that tell them when it's okay. Those light snakes were the ones going faster. Just told them slower.
Gotcha. I get that completely. I totally comprehend that. Absolutely.
That's a good explanation, Ben.
And that's because they're moving so fast.
That's because they're moving so fast, and it's because this relativity thing kicks in. So their time is dilated. Time seems to be moving slower to them than us.
Right.
But for them to...
Well, no. We see their time moving slower. They think time is moving the same.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so in the space capsule, they're not going like, "Roar" to each other. They think they're talking normally. They're not talking extra slow.
It's just if we had sort of a series of microphones set up along their path trying to eavesdrop on them, those microphones would be piecing together crazy, weird, slow conversations.
That's right.
That's...
Actually, yeah. So if there was a microphone on board the ship that was broadcasting back to us, they're communicating with each other, it would sound extra slow.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's so wonderfully backwards and counterintuitive that I love it. That's cool. I mean, and that's I got one pinky hooked around the example, and the rest of me is being dragged along. I get it. I do get it. I'm hooking on, but that's cool, and that's the most. That's one of the reasons why I agreed to do this show with you guys. I knew you guys were gonna give me some really out of this world, but totally. This is what reality is at these speeds, to the point where you can't, like, this doesn't make sense, but it does make sense if you just think about it with all these. It's amazing, man. It's wow. If that rant made any sense to anybody but me, so
it did, and it was perfect.
Yeah.
I think we've each individually kind of been there ourselves.
Been there.
Actually, I'm there now, just going, oh my god.
You just sort of you sound like you've been doing all the drugs, and you just sound like, well, yeah, I get that, bro. Oh, yeah, those speeds. That's what reality is like, dude. Oh, reality is great guns, man. Whoa.
Well done.
Thank you.
That's honestly like one of the things I love about this sort of stuff is that it's really like a mind-blowing experience just trying to understand it.
Oh, it's great. My brain feels like it's gone to the gym. It's like, all right, come on, special relativity. Here we go. 30 more reps. You got this. Oh, okay. Barn doors, lightning strikes. Oh, we got this.